Hello everyone, I'm Kyle Dyer and welcome to Colorado Inside Out on this Friday, October the 25th. Let me get right to introducing you to our insider panel for this week. We have Patty Calhoun, founder and editor of Westward, along with Elena Alvarez, reporter with Axios Denver, Carly West, VP of Government Affairs at the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, and Adam Berg, Senior Policy Advisor at Foster Graham Law Firm. So, early in-person voting started this week at 365 locations throughout our state, and ballots are also being turned in at 433 collection boxes. But we are still off to a slow start, with the number of ballots being turned in at this point being way behind where we were this time in 2020. Perhaps, Patty, it's because of the length of the Colorado ballot.
Or people are just waiting to see what crazy thing Donald Trump will say next. This was a good week for it. I'm not going to do the recap on Arnold Palmer or the Nazis, but it just gets wilder and wilder. We have to also remember, in addition to collection boxes, you can go to any mailbox up until next Monday to mail your ballot, Monday the 28th. But it is a really long ballot, and I think that's why people are slow. I think most people have made their choice on Trump or Harris. They're holding their nose and going with whichever one they like the best or dislike the least. But we have those 28 in Denver, 26 ballot measures, 14 of state, 12 in city, and they're really complicated. I don't think anyone's going to stay home. I hope not, because something on that ballot is going to be important to them, whether it's the abortion issue or the vet issue or the sentencing issue. There's something there for everyone that you should weigh in on, even if you can't decide who you're going to vote for at the top of the ticket.
That is true. Elena.
So something else that might be keeping voters from voting right now is related to a story that we dove into this week to look at how the city of Denver's cost-cutting effort to trim this year's ballot booklet is actually impacting voters. So for context, the city only printed and mailed ballot information for measures it was legally required to, which were the ones that are related to taxes. So that means that only 5 out of the 12 ballot measures are actually included in the booklet. So that's less than half. The clerk and recorder, Paul Lopez, he said it's going to save the city about $200,000. It's going to reduce its environmental impact, both good things. But we've heard from voters who are saying they are scrambling to find printed copies of this booklet. One place that the Denver Elections Division is referring voters to is their public libraries to get this full printed ballot. So I decided to check in with public libraries this week and see how their stock was. I called 22 of them, the 22 that were open on Monday. And what I learned is that over a third of them had no copies or only a few copies left, and they said they were going fast. So, clearly there's a problem here as we enter crunch time, as Denver voters face literally the longest ballot in city history. And instead of using valuable time to actually weigh these issues, they're on the hunt to even figure out what is on their ballot.
Carly.
We have the same concerns, and when you look at that ballot guide, it gives the impression that those are the only financial measures there, when in fact there are measures that are going to have major economic impacts on the Denver region and on Colorado. 308 and 309, which are the slaughterhouse and fur sales bans, those stand to economically devastate Colorado in several ways. CSU is projecting that if those were to pass, we could see 2,700 jobs lost, $861 million of economic activity lost. It puts the stock show at risk, which is one of the best things that we have going on in January, and particularly in the state. And we could see 50,000 empty hotel rooms that would really impact all of our local businesses that are in the hospitality and tourism sectors. So while those in theory aren't necessarily being framed as economic issues, they have a lot of opportunity to really negatively impact particularly small businesses and employee-owned businesses in the state.
Mm-hmm. Adam.
I think the idea of early voting sort of slow start, we're now in the world where voting is a season, not a day. There's multiple states, not just Colorado, voting now. Over 19 million people have cast their ballot. I would be shocked if we don't get into an 80% plus voter turnout in Colorado. Just to give you an idea of sort of the numbers that we're seeing in the breakdown of who seems to be voting, this is University of Florida's election lab. 45% of those voters are Democrats who voted early, 34% Republican, 22% unaffiliated. There's others who are looking at this data with sort of a similar trend. No big surprise, Democrats tend to vote early when we've seen these opportunities arise. But don't read into that. I think we're going to see a quick catch up from all sides of the voting bloc and expect really high turnout here in Colorado at the end of the day.
Each week since early August, our Colorado Inside Out panel has discussed a various measure on either the state or a local ballot. And since pet ownership statistics show that 64.7% of Colorado households have a pet, let's talk about Proposition 129, which would create a new veterinary PA position like we have human PA positions at our regular doctor's offices. Let's start with you, Elena.
Sure. So this ballot measure, which is actually endorsed by Governor Jared Polis, is really designed to address a critical, severe veterinary shortage in Colorado. So to put that into perspective, I want to share two stats. One is that 3,800 vets treat 2.5 million dogs and cats. And that is not even accounting for horses or other farm animals. And that's just in Colorado. Another stat is that 20% of Colorado counties lack or have little to no access to any veterinary care. So this is really at the heart of this issue. Other goals of the ballot measure to provide more relief for overworked doctors, clearly they're overworked, expanding career opportunities for veterinary professionals, and then providing greater access to vet care by offering lower cost treatment. On the other side though, this is opposed by two heavy hitters, the state and national veterinary medical associations. And they argue that this could be really dangerous to animals because if this position is created, they're going to have fewer years of training than a normal veterinarian. They go to school for 8 years.
Carly?
So I just learned a lot about this one right now. To be honest, there's so much on the ballot that this is one that I haven't even had much time to dig into. I love the PA at my doctor's office. I think it makes sense that maybe we would go that direction in veterinary care as well. But for me, this one illustrates more than anything else how our ballot system has really, in my opinion, gone a little bit off the rails. When we look at a ballot that is as many issues as we're looking at, people don't have the bandwidth to read in and do the amount of research necessary to really understand all of those. And a lot of these issues are things that our elected officials should be making decisions on our behalf. When I look to small businesses in the areas that we represent, they don't have the bandwidth to spend a lot of time on all of these, much less something as in the weeds as veterinary care. So when we see outside groups who are seeing Colorado as a good place to do a test run on their ideas for the ballot in other places because it is easy to get on the ballot and it is not that expensive to run the campaign, I think we've gone too far and need to take a step back and think about our approach to the ballot. All that said, I'm very much in favor of ballot access.
Okay, so we're a test run state.
We are.
Yes, and have been for a while.
It's true.
Adam.
So one thing I know about this, me and my partner had to bring our dog to the vet recently, $3,000 to get a couple teeth pulled. Just a general cleaning and a few teeth. So very expensive, and people have felt the cost of veterinary care for a long time. That said, I want to echo what Carly said. This feels like a legislative issue. It feels like something that we elect people to discuss, to become the experts on, to make decisions about, and designate this stuff through the system we have in place from January to May, which is our General Assembly. It feels to me, and this was a citizen-referred petition, so there was obviously a group that came and got the signatures, got on the ballot. Why not go to your legislature? Did they? That's a question I would ask of these people, and legislators maybe told them to go to the ballot. It's concerning to me, though, that we're asking voters to weigh in on things like this where I'm not a veterinarian. There's people around the state who are the experts here. But again, it just feels outside the purview of something we should be asking voters to decide.
Mm-hmm. Is your dog okay?
She's great.
Okay.
She's perfectly
good.
healthy.
Most
Yeah.
importantly.
Yeah.
Patty.
Well, I think of all the things we're voting on, like murderers, should they be out on bail, alleged murderers, all the other, the economy, really the animals one is one we can probably all weigh in on because we have more opinions on it than we do on the other issues. I think this is a great example of a citizen initiative. If you couldn't get the legislature to take the action to do something that's pretty commonsensical, this is a way to do it. Otherwise, we'd be stuck, who knows, for years. It seems like we have the need. You can't exactly put your pet on a telemedicine screen with the vet. This is a way to get more care easily, more inexpensively or less expensively. And it doesn't, why not? If the physician's assistant can work for adults, humans, why not this for animals?
Okay. Let's talk about the Denver ballot and specifically issue 2R, because we've yet really to devote a full topic to this election season. 2R is what proposes a sales tax for Denver to pay for more affordable housing. Carly, I'm going to start with you.
Sure, thank you. So in business, the approach is typically that you create a plan, and then once you have the plan, you look for the financing. And so for the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, while we think that affordable housing and access to housing is one of the most critical issues that we're facing as a community, we didn't get to a support position on that one, simply because when our business leaders looked at that, the approach was a little bit backwards from how we would typically approve funding for a new plan. That said, we really appreciate that there is enthusiasm and creativity around how we approach this as a really big challenge for our community. At the same time, we're currently ranked in Colorado 46th in 46th in the cost of living in the country. We're 39th in the cost of doing business. So we need to be really cognizant of where we're going in terms of taxation, simply because those numbers are not trending in our favor right now. We want to make sure that we are economically competitive so that we do have everyone with a good job who can afford housing in our city. That said, we are still looking forward to working with the mayor and others on the team, regardless of whether this passes or fails, because we do know that this is a critical issue, and we'll do everything we can to help deliver affordable housing to the employees and the businesses who need it in our communities.
Okay, Adam.
I think one thing I would reiterate to voters on this issue in particular is none of these things are operating in a vacuum. There's also a Denver Health measure on the ballot that looks at sales tax. Say both Affordable Denver and Denver Health pass, you're now looking at 9.65% sales tax in Denver, largest within the metro region. You have comparable rates in Netherland, Commerce City, and Boulder, but we're looking at sort of mountain community tax rates. I'll leave that for voters to decide if they think that's a good thing in the long term. And then this, above all else, $100 million a year is not going to fix affordable housing in Denver. There's other tools that we're looking at. The city's looking at the Downtown Development Authority expansion as another tool. Leveraging federal dollars is a tool, and we've heard both candidates talk about the need for affordable housing. So I would say voters looking at this, cautious optimism, right? This is a tool that could potentially be utilized to help maybe backfill projects and help with development. But by no means is this going to get us to the level of unit development that we are short within Metro Denver.
So you believe it's a tool, not the answer?
Correct.
Hattie.
When I was talking about initiatives where you want to be an expert, this is one of them. You want people who are experts in this field to weigh in. You want to know what the economic impact is, what the impact is in housing. And when you think about affordability in Denver, I've said it before, it's not just can you afford housing. Can you afford, once you have that housing, to pay for your trash removal, the other costs that are coming on, residential parking that you didn't used to have to pay for, the sidewalk fees you're going to have to start paying. It's becoming increasingly expensive to live in Denver for a variety of reasons. And I think that's one of the reasons this will go down, because voters don't see where the money is exactly going. They see where the money is going out of their own bank accounts, and they're going to take that into consideration. I also hope they take into consideration the real needs at Denver Health. And I think that's the referendum on where Denver is going. That's the kind of vote that would always pass in Denver, help the people less fortunate. This 2R would too, but I don't think now's the time.
Okay, all right.
Putting this on the ballot was an issue among Denver City Council members. They were, they begrudgingly did it. There's another battle, and just related to Adam talking about different tools for housing. There's a tool for housing right now called the Universal Basic Income Program, and this is also setting up a battle between City Council and the mayor right now. So they're hashing over the city budget. It's got to be finalized by mid-November. And right now, City Council is wanting to add more city budget funding for this program, which is an experimental program that provides no strings attached cash to people experiencing homelessness in the city for a way to give them a stable income and get them into housing. So for background, a study found that after 1 year, 45% of roughly 800 people enrolled in this program had actually secured housing, and it had also saved the city $600,000 for public service costs. But Mayor Johnston disagrees. And what's intriguing, Kyle, is that Johnston previously endorsed this program and even earlier this year expanded its funding, and now he's backtracking. So what we're watching right now is whether this standoff between City Council and Johnston will result in City Council using their supermajority to overturn a possible veto from Johnston. They have 11 of 13 council members in support of continuing funding. You only need 9 votes to actually overturn a mayoral veto. So we'll be watching how this plays out. But proponents of this program say if the city doesn't continue funding it, there's a really good chance that it will die.
Yeah, and it's been so helpful for people. Yeah. All right. Well, also big news this week, the downtown skyline will be changing with the zoning approval from the Denver City Council Monday night, even if you don't live downtown. This is a big deal. It's a big shift in the commercial and residential focus in our state's largest city. And our rules of having buildings not going a certain height so we can see the mountains, that's been kind of done away with in this case with some deal making. I'll have you start, Adam.
Sure. Yeah, this new Sports Mile development that's really going to change the skyline, your experience when you go downtown or go to a game. I think it's a good thing for the city in the grand scheme. We are a growing place. This sort of mixed multimodal access, mixed housing business model seems to work in other places. The one thing that I continue to hear, and that's become a priority through council and this administration, is good neighbor agreements. You're going to hear about this more and more over the next couple of years. And what this is, it's a tool they've used for House 1000 and preserving housing in particular, but signing agreements with neighborhood groups who maybe want something from a developer in return for developing in the area. It could be as easy as limiting pollution and noise, those sorts of things, to as much as maybe a childcare center offering. I think it's a tool that's important to communities getting what they want, but let's not forget it also at times can disincentivize developers from building in certain locations when they feel that a neighborhood is asking too much. So while I am glad to see the city using these tools and trying to build out Sports Mile and other areas, it is something I do have concerns about in the future as we look to other developments around Metro Denver.
Okay, Patty.
The view plane is a kind of archaic rule we have. I'm more concerned about the long view of what our city is becoming, and do we know all the different pieces? I happen to live on the bluff, so it's going to ruin my view going the other way, or I should say just block out my view of downtown. But what I can also see is it's going to be very, very difficult to get people in and out of downtown into North Denver. We are going to have some really tough transportation problems unless they are very, very smart. There's no transportation plan yet. That will have to be done with the ball arena development. But we have to keep an eye on that too. We have to think about all the people who are going to come downtown to see these teams that are going to stay here, because that was part of the deal through 2050. Who knows if people will be able to even able to get to Ball Arena, because that's not an easy part of town to get to. We've got Spear, we've got 15th, it's an island. So there's so many more pieces beyond the view plane in this project we've got to keep an eye on.
I think of one side of Spear, the stadium area, the Ball Arena, and then the Cherry Creek area they'll be building up too on either end, right?
We're going to need bungee, just bungee jumping across the city.
All right, you can do it first.
Okay.
All right, Elena.
This was one of the most monumental votes that Denver City Council has faced in years. And the fact that it, a massive project like this passed almost unanimously was pretty significant. Much of City Council support rested on the agreement that Adam is referring to. It was reached this month between Cronky and about a dozen neighborhood and community groups. And a key part of that agreement made 18% of the 6,000 houses that will be built as part of this project designated as affordable. And that was really crucial for a lot of residents in the area who are already very concerned, reasonably so, about Denver's lack of affordable housing. Of course, not all residents in the area are happy about it, even outside of the area, and that's a lot to deal with what Patty mentioned, the view of the mountains. But the project isn't expected to happen overnight by any means. Developers are actually estimating it's going to take 25 years. So when it's finished, it's going to more than double the size of downtown Denver, which is really kind of astonishing to think about. And there's no doubt, the city skyline is going to be completely changed for anyone who's still around 25 years later to see it.
When I was driving here today, I was driving along City Park Golf Course and the beautiful skyline we have now, and just thinking, oh, it's going to have another part in 2 decades.
Yeah.
Carly.
So I am so excited about this. I can't think of another major city that has this type of opportunity to have new development like this in the heart of their downtown. We have a housing crisis. This is an opportunity to bring 6,000 new houses and new homes to right in the heart of the city. It's no secret that downtown Denver has not responded from the COVID pandemic with the amount of vibrancy that we saw pre-pandemic. This is a project that is going to help bring more residential foot traffic downtown so that we can see those restaurants and small businesses and other retail shops having people through those doors from foot traffic every day of the week. I think that this is an incredible opportunity for us to really grow in a very thoughtful way about how we develop those businesses and what we want to see in our community. But I think it presents incredible opportunity, and I'm so excited.
And isn't it true, part of the agreement too, 20% of the businesses need to be small, minority-owned, or women-owned businesses?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's talk about some of the highs and lows of this week. We'll start with the lows so we can end on a high note. Patty, I'm starting with you.
There have been plenty of lows in this election season, but Elon Musk, his current behavior on the trail is not just giving the $1 million away, but also once again pushing the falsities about Dominion, the Colorado-based voting services system company. It's appalling, and after 4 years, this should have been put to rest.
Yeah.
Speaking of misinformation, I reported on a survey this week that found 82% of Denver residents are really worried about misinformation and fake news ahead of the election. And their fears were further validated not only by what Patty just talked about, but there was a text message sent around to Colorado voters across the state that was falsely claiming that the state's largest teachers union was supporting Colorado's Amendment 80 on school choice, and that wasn't true. So it's a scary time to really discern truth from fake.
Yep. Carly.
A new report hit my inbox just a couple of hours before I came here about Colorado education data, and showing that while we've made some improvements, the Colorado paradox, where we don't graduate as many of our in-state graduates as we import from other states, continues to be true. So it laid plain that we've still got some work to do, especially when it comes to workforce readiness training and college readiness training.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I want to touch on just the length of the ballot at large. Voters in 2016 passed the Raise the Bar measure with the whole intent of making it more difficult for things to get on the ballot or change our Constitution. Now we're looking at 14 measures. It's equivalent to 20 years record high ballot initiative levels. And it just makes me beg the question, is Raise the Bar working as it was intended? And I think it's worthy of conversation as we kind of go ahead and go forward as a state about what do we want our ballots to look like in the future.
Okay, next time you're on. Okay? All right, let's talk about a high.
Let's talk about a great weekend with good weather and Day of the Dead festivities and Halloween events all over town. But Civic Center is having a Day of the Dead celebration tomorrow, and it's definitely worth getting out there, enjoy the city, look at how great parts of downtown look, and just have fun.
Okay.
And look at the mountains while you can.
Yes. Helena.
Patty touched on this a little bit, but the Denver Nuggets and Colorado Avalanche signed a major deal to continue playing in Denver at Ball Arena until 2050, and that's great news for sports fans, and that's great news for Denver's economy.
And we can see some of the games now that are home that we haven't been able to see, so that's really good news too.
So my organization just wrapped up our annual site selection conference, which is one of the most fun things that our members get to do every year. We bring in the people who are charged with finding places for companies to expand or relocate, bring them in, show them everything that is great about the Denver metro area, and then really get some feedback on where we're great and where we can improve. It laid out a great roadmap for what we need to do, but also we consistently heard that our region punches above its weight when it comes to a lot of desirability. So that was great news.
That is fabulous news. All right.
Mine is Colorado football is back. We got CU Buffs, CSU Rams, Denver Broncos, all winning records in October. First time since early 2000s that we've had this. So as a proud CU Buff alum, I am just enjoying the winning streak we're seeing from some of our teams right now.
It is exciting. My high is a civil discourse that we are able to have here at this table every week. These days, you can't turn on a device without hearing people passionately sharing their perspectives and more than likely interrupting others, and quite often in a degrading way. Here at the CIO table, we are listening to our viewers as well, listeners and followers, many of whom have let us know that they didn't care for comments made on last week's show. I never know ahead of time what exactly one of our panelists will say, and we never edit out comments made because of what is said. We welcome all perspectives. Now, if someone is long-winded, we may have to do some tweaking to make sure the show hits the airtime slot here on PBS 12. But the full version runs as is on our podcast. We must listen to one another's viewpoints, even if they're different from our own, in order to fully understand the scope of the issues that we are facing as a community. So with that, thank you to our insiders for joining us this week. Thank you for watching and listening online and on our podcast. I'm Kyle Dyer. I will see you next week here on PBS 12.
PBS 12 believes in the power of original, local programming. Help us bring more shows, like the one you just watched, by donating at pbs12.org/program support today.